Good evening, Board of Trustees. This evening, I'm going to be sharing with you information regarding our social and emotional learning and comprehensive guidance for 2019 and 2020. This aligns with Standard 1 of adopted board priorities, which is to provide a responsible school district governance, ensuring the board is accountable and open to the public, including seeking divergent perspectives in its decision-making process. The action for the district to summarize programs, department initiatives to the board throughout the year. What SEL and comprehensive guidance aligns to Goal 3 in our district improvement plan, Performance Objective 1, enhance success for all students by supporting their social and emotional development in a variety of coordinated efforts to honor relationships and celebrate the power of diversity, which is measured by a 5% decrease in the number of substantiated bullying investigations, as well as 100% participation in cultural proficiency trainings. Our strategies in order to accomplish the goals in this objective are provided by our direct counseling hours, bullying prevention, digital citizenship, comprehensive school counseling programs, suicide prevention programs, our cultural proficiency training, as well as our diversity council meetings to design our future initiatives, our research-based student awareness programs provided by AIM for Success, and our violence prevention programs also provided by AIM for Success. We've also looked at staffing or strategies for a student support counselor and a social emotional support specialist, the implementation of trauma-informed care practices, discipline management, conflict resolution, and behavior coaching. First, I'm going to discuss our comprehensive guidance program. So the program framework comes from our Texas model for comprehensive school counseling programs. This model is an integral part of our educational system. It is a way that for our counseling programs that we plan systematically to apply our special knowledge and skills to the whole child, for all of our students. So in order to not just focus on their academic learning, but their emotional and social side of our students that we know is important for development. This is a part of the TEC, Texas Education Code 33.005, where it specifies that a school counselor shall work with school faculty and staff, students, parents, and the community to plan, implement, evaluate a developmental guidance program. There are 4 components for the school counseling program: guidance curriculum, responsive services, individual planning, and system support. And you will be able to tell that each one of these 4 components is very integral into the part of a school counselor's job. So for example, our guidance curriculum, that is put into place to help develop students' full educational potential. Responsive services, that is more specific for our individual counseling for our students. That could be preventative, remediation, or crisis counseling. Individual planning really involves the part of our student where we're looking at their plans of their educational and career and personal and social developmental goals. And then system support is the basis of the counseling program. This is the effort where we coordinate with teachers, students, staff, and parents, and other members of the community in order to design and plan the rest of the counseling program: guidance, responsive, and individual planning. Here's an example of the program balance, and this is taken out of the Texas model for comprehensive guidance program. You can see that it looks very similar to our tier model when we're looking at academics. At the bottom is system support, that's the foundation. And then at a tier level, tier 1 is the guidance curriculum, which is comprehensive, and that's for all students. And then it becomes more intentional as you move up the tier of the triangle to target specific groups, small groups or individual planning, and then those students who may need more individualized support and specialized interventions. So you can see that in a student's lifetime through K through 12, that they may need these services on a variety of levels depending on the circumstance, but always at level 1, we're providing the general guidance curriculum for our students. When we're looking at our recommended program balance, this is really important to look at as far as looking at the delivery, our service components, and how the percentages should be equalized in each one of the components. So for example, At elementary, guidance is 35 to 45% of the time spent for students. However, you can see the difference when you go to high school, that the guidance curriculum time is a lot smaller. But the opposite of that, you'll see that individual planning, for example, is really low at the elementary level. It's a small percentage of what elementary counselors do, but at the high school level, that number is increased significantly as the students are edging toward post-secondary readiness, that those individual planning percentages would increase. And so program balance is really important to look at as you see responsive services stays fairly similar across levels, a little bit lower at the high school, but then system support has increased at the high school level. These numbers that you're seeing here on your screen are really related to a student to counselor ratio, and what models, different models recommend different ratios. So for example, ASCA, which is the American School Counseling Association, they recommend a different ratio than the Texas Association of Secondary School Principals. So the American School Counselor Association recommends 1 to 250 students, and other Texas Counseling Association and the Texas Association of Secondary Principals recommends 1 to 350. At Midlothian ISD, our ratio is a little bit higher than that. We also use TASB to help us design and understand districts that look like ours and how we design our counseling staffing. So when you're looking at the ratios presented here, this is in a maybe the perfect scenario where the ratios are much lower. However, we strive to try to model and get to these ratios. This is one of our goals that we've been working with counselors and principals in order to balance our program. So comprehensive guidance, I mentioned earlier, is the program curriculum that we systematically and intentionally guides the planning to assist all students to enhance their educational, career, personal, and social development. The 5th edition of the Texas model establishes 4 general content areas designed to help students. For each one of these four areas, there are different levels. And so while the goals remain the same across the grade spans, the accomplishments will vary depending on the developmental stages of the student. So for example, the first content area is interpersonal effectiveness, and you can see underneath that are positive student self-concept, effective executive functioning skills, appropriate behavior to the situation and environment. Then we have intrapersonal effectiveness, which is effective interactions with diverse populations, appropriate communication, recognizing personal boundaries and privacy, effective conflict resolution, development of healthy relationships. The third area is post-secondary education career readiness. As you notice, this is K through 12, and so it would look different, obviously, as the students move through the levels, but we're looking at helping students understand what are their personal endeavors, demonstration of career exploration skills, their knowledge of the skills that they're going to need for post-secondary education planning, and their awareness of the importance of that, of the planning, and understanding the relationship between academics and the world of work and the life at home and in our community. And then finally, personal health and safety, incorporation of wellness practices into daily living, demonstration of resiliency and positive coping skills, and possession of assertiveness skills necessary for personal protection. So there are many areas in the 4 content curriculum areas for counselors to cover, and they look different depending on what level of the student, whether they're elementary, middle, or high school. A quick example of what elementary guidance looks like, some of the things that are more broad and ongoing that happen throughout the year to put into place that comprehensive curriculum. And the guidance program as a whole, as we mentioned, the responsive services, including system support, individual planning, and such. So we have individual counseling happening during COVID. We did this via Google Hangouts. There's a system called daily check-in and check-outs with SEL goals. So these are quick check-in and check-outs with students that counselors utilize to start their day and end their day, where students set goals that are very personalized, and then see at the end of the day, did they achieve those goals? Peer mediation and circles, classroom guidance. This was included in our SEL activities during COVID as well. Small group counseling, lunch bunch groups. Counselors present often at monthly PTO meetings where they discuss the character trait of the month, parenting tips, and such. There are morning meetings and community building circles that are happening in all of our classrooms. Counselors sometimes participate in those, but they also help facilitate and help design for our teachers. Counselors are very elementary, very involved with Student Honor Council as they see leadership with those students and community service and lead those activities. There are other things that they work with teachers in our PLCs and with our specials teams. So for example, elementary counselors will go into our PE classes or art and music classes, and there are times where they design with those specials teachers to coordinate SEL activities. They also coordinate service learning activities. Kindness Rocks Club is one example. Monthly assemblies, most of our campuses do some sort of monthly assembly or house meeting or with a character focus. And so they're going over a character trait of the month or a certain skill that needs to be covered. And it's a way for the campus to come together as a family. In addition, the website and the parent newsletter and social media updates are all ongoing. At the elementary level, there are monthly activities where they are balancing their program. These are listed examples such as National Bullying Prevention Month, Red Ribbon, Riding the Wave, Suicide Prevention. We have our Aim for Success and REACH programs, Start with Hello Week, Toy Drive. Think First, Stay Safe. Our SROs present to first, third, and fifth grade students, and our counselors typically go in and coordinate, and sometimes they will co-teach that information together. Great Kindness Challenge lessons and activities, fifth grade parent nights, career month lessons. There are GT, identification parent meetings at each campus. Career museums and career exploration for our students, school blood drive with Student Honor Council, and daily SEL lessons with parenting tips. So those are some monthly things that happen in a cycle throughout the year. We plan a yearly year at a glance, and so the monthly activities help us ensure that sometimes during the month this is where we're going to focus on this specific skill or activity. Also, our middle school guidance have, as you saw in the program balance, it looks different for middle school. These are some ongoing activities for our middle school counseling program. Individual counseling, of course, through Google Hangouts during COVID, but during the year that is ongoing. Middle school, they run many small group counseling sessions with students based off of the need of the student. Here are some examples: Friends of Rachel, grievance support, leadership for girls, Brave Boys, self-esteem, mental health club. And so basically through a needs assessment and through situations that may come up organically, the teachers will refer and they will create a group in order to help those students. Ongoing is also suicide risk assessments and return from treatment facility monitoring. That is definitely increased at our secondary level, where they spend a lot of time with students and parents in that regard. Ensuring that as students are growing and they are maybe initiating or talking about things regarding self-harm, or maybe they have had to spend some time away at a behavioral or treatment facility, that they are monitoring that return for those students with a plan in place. They do individual and group crisis response, individual academic advising. That's that part of individual planning on our comprehensive model, where our counselors do work with our students on academic advising, and they do whole group as well as we do course selection. Parent communication via email, phone, in person, as well as website, social media updates continuously, and newsletters for parents. That's ongoing, depending on what the situation is, to send out information. And then classroom guidance. So while classroom guidance looks different at the middle school and high school level, they do actually go in and see students for different reasons and do whole group lessons. We included those SEL activities as well during COVID. Here's some middle school guidance things that are monthly. And so you saw a broad overview. Here are some monthly activities with Cub Camp and Cat Camps and our 6th through 8th grade orientations, suicide prevention training with our staff, new to district student groups. We have a lot of new to district students that come join, and so they are making sure that they get to know those new students to our district. Suicide Prevention Month, start with hello, our Reach Council Red Ribbon, and our bullying prevention months, National Mix It Up Day, David's Law presentations for students where they go over, is it rude, mean, or bullying? NAMI comes out and presents suicide and depression awareness in certain grade levels. We've also utilized Grant Halliburton Foundation for mental health updates. Aim for Success, I believe already mentioned. And then the Great Kindness Challenge, we've expanded that to our middle schools. And then of course, course selection advising is something that would happen in a month in our year. High school guidance, again, as you get up in the levels, it looks a little bit different on how they implement their comprehensive program, but individual counseling is really important as they are individually advising students. They're spending a lot of time in that area, and this is done via Google Hangouts during COVID. They also work with letters of recommendations for our students. They visit our DAEP and LEAP students as well. Website, social media updates. I know our secondary counselors attempt to continuously send information that is relevant depending on what grade level. Obviously, our seniors oftentimes get more emails and information because we are, working with them to, number one, get them graduated, and then on top of that, have their post-secondary plan ready. And so that involves a lot of communication. And so parent communication is really key, especially at that secondary level, whether it's in phone or on the phone or in person. Suicide risk assessments, as I mentioned before, this is something that they do more often at a secondary level than at elementary, and the return from treatment facility monitoring for those students that may be returning. Individual and group crisis response, definitely counselors are involved in that at the high school level, as well as individual academic advising, as I mentioned, as we've increased to that need at the secondary high school level. Classroom guidance, they do try to get into classrooms. If you'll remember on the percentages, that part is much lower at the high school level. We do try to accomplish some of those guidance lessons through advisory time and then Naviance activities, depending on the scope and the sequence. So monthly, different things that happen at the high school on a monthly basis, new to district mingle. So again, those new students that are coming in, freshman and new student orientation for our JAG and our Panther camps, in addition to orientations for each grade level, bringing those students in and helping them understand what the expectations are and just things that they're looking forward to in that grade level. Suicide prevention training for staff, Suicide Prevention Month, Red Ribbon Week, National Bullying Prevention, grade level parent nights and grade level student meetings. You're going to see in a few minutes as we get to those slides that is a really key part of what happens at a specific time of year. College fair, digital citizenship, and then Aim for Success programs. So one thing that I mentioned when you're looking at our comprehensive guidance is our system support. And that involves parents and community as well as, and then training for our teachers and our staff. And so in order to meet those needs of our staff, including our counseling staff, part of what we want to do is arm them with relevant information ongoing as it's important and needed, depending on not only the situation, whether it be compliance, we have to do it every year, or whether it be we see the need. So you can see in 2019, starting in June and July, that Eric Hoff offered Empowered Academies over mental health in schools. We also had youth mental health first aid that summer, and Shanna Malone, our SEL specialist, offered SEL and classroom management in the summer of 2019. Then moving into August, you can see some of the topics that I cover with new counselors in our retreat: character ed, our child abuse reporting, suicide prevention, power school training, referral process, and community resources. And then we also covered our threat assessment training in August with counselors, myself and Dr. Hemley and Commander Hicks. We went over a threat assessment with our counselors. New teacher orientation, Shannon Malone also conducted for our new teachers SEL and classroom management in August of 2019. In September, as we moved into the school year, there were many things that happened. You can see on the 24th, the 12th, and the 20th, those certain dates were very specific, where we trained our principals, our assistant principals, and our counselors in bullying, threat assessments, our DAP transitions, and our mental health transitions. And so the law requires us to not only to train, but also have a system and a process in place when our students are transitioning back from DAP or a mental health facility. And so we were sure to cover all of that information right at the beginning of last year, and we plan to do the same again this year. Also, at the very end of September, you'll see that Eric Hoff, along with a trainer from MHMR, provided assist training, which was applied suicide intervention skills to our counselors. That was a 2-day training. So you'll see over here as we get into October, this was October 1st was the second day of that assist training. On October 7th, as I have meetings with counselors, I try to bring in relevant information for them. We had Region 10 come in for Leaving a Clear Trail, which is helping our special education students in their path for graduation. We discussed Red Ribbon Week, bullying awareness. Miss Malone, Shannon Malone, covered some SEL with our elementary. We talked about our advising timeline and our Naviance scope and sequence. As we moved into November, our all district counselor meeting, I covered legislative updates with them. We got into our SOS planning, our signs of suicide planning, our Naviance scope and sequence, and really looked at our parent nights that were upcoming, our year at a glance that I've mentioned before, advising and gifted and talented. So you can see as the year moves, we're gearing up for many things that our counselors are highly involved in. December was a short month, so we didn't have any trainings there, but then starting in January, we were back at it in January of 20 with some important training. We partnered with the Ellis County Advocacy Center for Sexual Abuse and Investigations. And that was a very helpful training for our counselors. We actually, on January the 16th, that was for APs and our principals. On January the 7th, our counselors, actually, we went over to the advocacy center and met with the leaders there to cover sexual abuse and investigations and how the advocacy center can partner with the school district in certain situations. Also providing a legislative update there. As we moved into February, Eric Hoff provided a mental health in schools, a Cognito simulation, and I will talk about that in more in depth in just a minute. And then at our all district counselor meeting, we looked at, in February, we looked at our SOS planning because that was coming soon, and then updated our district crisis plan and looked at our Naviance tasks. Then in March, you can see that starting with March and our school closure, it was really impossible almost for me to detail out everything we met, all the topics regarding our school closure. I met weekly with the counselors. It was virtually. I met with elementary, middle, and high school, and we met weekly, sometimes more than that, to be sure that we were all on the same page, understanding that very fluid situation and the needs of our students and our staff. In April and May, you will see that as Eric had begun the mental health in schools Cognito with during our AP Academy, we expanded that to include any other assistant principals who had not already had it, but then our principals. And then we included elementary teachers and secondary teachers for the mental health in schools for Cognito. In addition, Shannon Malone provided our elementary teachers a conscious discipline series that I'll also talk about in just a few slides. So for our Cognito training, Eric trained approximately 158 teachers and administrators during our spring remote learning. And Shannon Malone trained approximately 72 elementary teachers during our spring and remote learning. So to give you an overview of what Cognito is, so when I say that's something that Eric provided, Cognito it's a software and it's a simulation, and it's to teach our pre-K through 12 educators about mental health, and which supports improved student wellness and school safety. And so what happens is as a user meets a virtual coach online, and it's about a 60 to 120 minute session. And they learn about mental health, how to identify at-risk students, how to approach them, their parents, and connect with them. So one thing that we know is that our teachers are our front lines, and they see students every day. And so this helps arm them with understanding how to identify at-risk students and how to actually approach a student, or in the other way, if a student approaches the teacher with a situation, that they are armed with the skills and how to handle that. So they learn warning signs of distress. They do several case studies. So what it is it's an avatar. There's a teacher and a student, and there are different cases, and it depends on what level. So elementary and middle and high school had very different cases, as you can imagine, because of that level, their situations differ. And they learn that while educators are not expected to diagnose or counsel, however, they're in a position to be able to identify problems and then connect students to resources that can help. So to give the warm handoff to a counselor, or give the warm handoff to another individual that is equipped to handle that situation. And so through the simulation, they learned how to practice reflective statements and how to encourage in different techniques. And so, for example, the avatar student will say something, and then as the teacher, you have the opportunity to respond in several ways. And depending on how you respond, that is how the avatar actually responds. And so we had a lot of healthy discussion especially with our assistant principals as they began to do this. When you're doing a simulation, they realize, oh my goodness, I said the wrong thing already, because my reaction now sent the student in defensive mode. And so it's very real. It's very real life, a simulation. And that was important for us to look at and to teach. And then there's a virtual coach there coaching along and helping the teacher or the principal run through that simulation with the student to then get them to the place where you hope that you can refer or share. And so this was a pilot that we did. We only had a certain number of licenses. And based off of the feedback we got, I believe we're going to be looking into how can we use Cognito. They have many different packages. We used the at-risk package this last year. They do have trauma-informed care and some other things that we may be looking into because we did see the effectiveness of it. And so one thing is, during the Cognito implementation, I already mentioned Eric trained 158 administrators and teachers. They also have built-in pre and post assessments. And so that is Cognito's way of, they monitor themselves to make sure that their simulations are relevant, and they want to make sure that our teachers or users learned the goals that they hoped, and that's an ongoing feedback so that they can better their product. It is anonymous, and there were several questions that were not required for teachers to answer. And so that also allowed for some honesty with the response. And so you can see that assistant principals completed this in face-to-face sessions. But then when we went virtual, Eric conducted virtual sessions. So what they would do is they would do the simulation, and then he scheduled meetings and worked with them virtually. So for discussion and reflection by level. So we had elementary, middle, and high school grouped together. Principals then turned and selected teachers to complete the simulation. As I mentioned, it was a pilot, so we had very limited licenses. And so based on need, principals had that discretion to decide who they wanted to go through the simulation. And Eric would conduct virtual sessions by grade level, or at the secondary level, he did it by content area. And so what was really nice is all kindergarten teachers were able to talk, first grade teachers and so forth, because across the district in a virtual setting. So that was really neat for us to be able to do that, and provided really rich conversation with what they learned. Here are a couple of examples. These are from our teachers who went through this training. The question was, now that you've completed the simulation, please describe a situation that you would have managed differently. What happened and what would you have done differently? So I pulled some excerpts from that survey. Again, it was anonymous, but we did have some teachers provide some really detailed information here. And so we were happy to see that not only did they do the simulation, but they in turn reflected on skills that they could use and what in situations where they could have done something differently. And so that helped us know that, this was not a training that was just a checkbox, that this was a training that they actually took away some learning. There were other sample questions like this, but I wanted to kind of show you a snapshot of just some of the things that they said. I won't read them all to you on the screen, but there were a few that I felt like this was worthy of looking at, and how they learned some reflective skills and just assured themselves of sometimes they feel awkward talking to a student about something, how they don't have to put themselves in a counseling role. They put themselves in a reflective, a listening role, and learn how to ask more questions instead of pass judgment or give advice, which we often do as adults. So I wanted to show you some of that feedback. The other training I mentioned that happened during our remote learning, Shannon Malone conducted Conscious Discipline. And that is an adult first comprehensive social emotional classroom management program. You may have heard of it, but it teaches children and adults self-control, conflict resolution, character development, and social skills. And so it works with the teacher first. Conscious discipline really helps the teacher learn how to shift their own mindset about discipline so that they can become better models for healthy social emotional skills with their students. And so they go through their own process first so that they can become adults equipped to handle our students. It's based on 4 essential components: the brain state model, which is really how the 3 basic brain, body, and mind states produce certain behaviors. Some are intentional and some are specific responses that enable certain skills. And so they learn a lot of brain-based information. The 7 powers for conscious adults is a shift in the way that we see conflict, and so that they are able to self-regulate their own emotions prior to handling a student. And then creating the school family. This one I love. We talked so much about building relationships. And so this helps our teachers understand the connection between adults and children at all levels, and ensuring that with routines and rituals and our structures that we provide in our classroom. And then the 7 skills of discipline. Conscious discipline has 7 specific skills on how they use teachable moments. So constant teachable moments where they can resolve conflict and develop healthy behaviors. So Mrs. Malone, approximately 75 teachers completed an 8-week, 11-hour training course live virtually. And so this really impressed me, this number. Again, this was elementary. However, if you think about during our remote learning, how our teachers were still in that frame of seeking training, they signed up for it on their own as they were able to. And as she conducted it live, they learned virtually. And so each week she offered several sessions that would fit into their schedule. There was a reflection piece at the end of the session, and they gained knowledge in trauma-informed practices, bully prevention, classroom management strategies, and social emotional learning. And you can see that, just looking at behavior, how that is communicated and how it works with the brain. And then the school family part, the importance of building the relationship first. And then those 7 skills I mentioned: composure, assertiveness, empathy, choices, encouragement, positive intent, and consequences. So I was excited to see that our teachers really wanted to learn more about conscious discipline, and we used a time where maybe it wasn't optimal with school closure, but we used that time to also train. Another thing that we do for a comprehensive SEL is our parent opportunities. We work very hard in coordination with our campuses and our communications team on a variety of parent learning opportunities. And so many of them were secondary and post-secondary planning, prevention programming, and social emotional learning topics. So for example, in August of 2019, you can see, we started off the year with secondary student orientations in our elementary Meet the Teacher. We also, leading into September, we did Eric Hoff and I did a suicide prevention parent U via Facebook Live. We had NCAA parent night, Duke tip night. Aim for Success also did a bullying prevention, and that was during the afternoon. In October, we moved through with FAFSA at each campus. That's a workshop that parents and students were able to attend. And then Reach Council helped provide drug prevention parent U Facebook Live. I facilitated that with Cassie Street. In November, as our elementaries are gearing up for GT referrals, we did a GT parent night. And then you can see in January how our month of January was very busy with parent nights. So we started off with our middle school, our 5th grade transition parent nights. And then because Dietrich was opening and that was new staff, they also held a 6th and a 7th grade night. Then we went in, we had our 8th grade parent nights at both campuses in January and our course fairs at both campuses in January. And that was an opportunity for our parents our 8th grade parents to come and hear about what high school life is like on those campuses, what courses are available, some language, CTE, pathways, what's a PGP, just giving them some vocabulary. And then they were able to explore courses that was open for our 9th, 10th, and also our 11th graders as well to come to the course fair. Then we began with our dual credit parent nights. In January, we had Heritage, and then right in February, we had MHS. Right in March, before our school closure, we had an SOS parent meeting. We were about to launch in our Signs of Suicide program, and Eric Hoff and I hosted a parent meeting on March the 4th. And then after we learned that we were closing school, and at that point, we thought for a short time, we did, several of us, myself and Julie Nelson and Shannon Malone conducted a SEL and counseling school closure Facebook Live session. As our comprehensive guidance, I want to highlight our community partnerships. So we partner with Aim for Success, and these were our elementary programs this last year. In 2019, we did bullying, Super Friends with Superpowers K through 2, and then 3 through 5, bullying and empower. And you can see the numbers there, approximately how many students were able to participate in those presentations. In the 6th grade, Aim for Success provides Power to Succeed, drugs and alcohol presentation, abstinence-based presentation at the 7th grade level. 8th grade was focused on success with technology, teens, sexting, and pornography. In 9th grade, we circle back up with bullying. In 10th grade, Power to Succeed. 11th grade, abstinence, and 12th grade, focus on success again. So we looked at our scope and sequence essentially of these programs with our principals to determine at what level do we want to start some of these topics and shift, and then make sure they get it again. And then you can see approximately how many students were able to participate in those programs. We also work with Reach Council. So Cassie was able to give me the numbers of students that they connected with for their programs. In 1st through 5th grade, they offer Kids Connection, which is a small group resiliency-based program. They were able to reach 191 students. In 5th grade, they did a life skills training and saw 89 students, and we're actually going to try to expand that program this year. In 6th grade, they offer Too Good for Drugs to approximately 755 6th grade students at both our Franks Hill and Walnut Grove. For DAP, they provide curriculum-based presentations, and so that is something that we really appreciate their partnership with DAP, and they saw about 160 students there. Red Ribbon Week, they come and present, and you can see the number 3,334 students approximately for those presentations. Reach Council also provided summer enrichment with 42 students participating in 2019 and the Back to School Fair in 2019. And we'll update those numbers for next year as we have them for 2020 and 21. We also partner with Mentors Care, and you can see the numbers at each high school. MHS, 55 students, and Heritage High School, 38 students. When we were looking at staffing for 2019 and 2020, we were able to really, I want to expand, and this has been a goal in our department and with leadership, administrative leadership, to help establish and really expand, not just to have campus counselors, but other support staff to help the whole the counseling program as a whole. And so we were able to add our social emotional support specialist at elementary. That is Shanna Malone that I've been mentioning. We added 2 middle school counselors in the last year, and so we were able to have 3 at Frank Seal last year and 3 at Walnut Grove. We had 1 paraprofessional designated for our JV counselor, and then our full-time RTI interventionist went full-time for elementary to assist with 504 paperwork. And so both the paraprofessional at JV and the elementary RTI interventionist, that helped the counselor take off some of the paperwork load that they had been responsible for. And then we added the Eric Hoff, and that was really in March of 2019. We were able to hire Eric Hoff. So just to give you an idea of what our student support counselor role is, that is something that I feel like has been very valuable to MISD. And so primary job roles and responsibilities include crisis counseling for secondary campuses, providing counseling to DAP and LEAP, provide specialized training to our school counselors and our teachers and staff, conduct district threat assessments, consult with campus counselors, and support our district and campus crisis teams. And so as, you know, I asked Mr. Hoff, Eric Hoff, to provide some information just so we could look at his program and see the impact he was making in our district. And he had 361 individual counseling sessions last year with 222 hours, 75 DAP intakes, 25 hours of SEL groups, 24 hours of crisis debriefing groups, and 9 threat assessments. And then you can see his training that he was able to provide to our staff with 16 hours to counselors, 9 to administrators, and 41 hours to teachers. Here are the topics that he was able to cover with our training. You know, I really did not want just to have, you know, add staff is one thing, but also add staff that can provide training and assistance. And so he was able to provide assist to suicide prevention that I mentioned earlier, active listening and collaborative problem solving, the motivational interviewing with a student, recognizing connecting students for at-risk and mental health problems through Cognito, and threat assessments. And then he conducted some staff group crisis debriefing, 8 hours at middle school and 1 at high school. Our social emotional learning specialist that I mentioned, Ms. Malone, her primary job responsibilities are a little different. She's not a licensed professional counselor like Mr. Hoff is. However, she does have a different type of skill set in her master's degree program, and it does cover, she has some very specific skill in social emotional learning. And so she's our on-site SEL leader for elementary. She assists teachers in the classroom. So her design is really to go into the classroom, observe, and assist teachers with the management of the systems that they have in place. Help with our multidisciplinary teams on with students that maybe need behavior support. She helps teach how to model and help students with their social emotional regulation. She analyzes behavior in an effective classroom and helps design behavior contracts and different things for our teachers. And she provides individualized coaching for our teachers. And you'll be able to see her numbers on the next slide. So she supported 97 teachers last year, either in classroom support or child observations. We already mentioned she helped with virtual training, 72 teachers this year just during the remote time. She broke down her grade level percentages of what level she worked with the most. And you can see in that chart that kindergarten, it was very high. And I believe that's that's an important grade level. And so she was able to meet that grade level very well. 68% child observations, 5.8 SAT. So she sat in our student assistant team meeting or ARD meetings or other PLCs, and then did progress monitoring, goal setting, helping teachers learn how to do that. Approximately 89 hours of training. So she would go to staff meetings and she would do lunch and learns during the school day, and teachers could sign up. She went to a few PTO meetings as well. And then of course the virtual training I've already mentioned. Here are the topics: brain development, composure, a calm down space in your classroom, tattling, social conflict, developing self-awareness in students through discipline. She did many back to school, the first 6 weeks of what do you do as you go back to school, contracts, discipline and trauma, and then other things for the classroom: assertiveness, consequences, and choices. So for future planning, what I've covered with you are many things that we did in 19 and 20 as an overview of last year. As we lead into this year, we know that there are many things our students are going to need. So what we did already in our summer trainings is Eric Hoff and Shannon Malone conducted empowered sessions for trauma-informed practices and social emotional learning, with the emphasis on the impact of COVID-19. So we know that the situation that we're in with the pandemic is absolutely different than anything most of us have ever experienced in our lifetime, including our students. And so they began to offer summer trainings for teachers at choice to go through some different information for what is trauma-informed practices, what does it look like in the classroom, and SEL. So we did that over the summer. For trauma-informed practice specifically, there were several things that I want to mention. I already mentioned the summer empowered offerings, but then all of our district staff members completed through compliance training this year. They completed a module that took them through what trauma-informed practice is, what it is, definitions, what does it look like in the classroom and through students. And then all of our new to district teachers received an in-depth training through TBRI, which is trust-based relational intervention. And that was conducted face-to-face and during new teacher orientation. Shannon Malone, Eric Hoff, and our new student support counselor, Melissa Goldthwait, conducted those sessions. And then on August 17th, all of our campus counselors with their own staff conducted training for teachers that included trauma-informed practices. And so I really feel like we have provided quite a bit of information and training for our teachers as we lead into this very vital school year. Our SEL trainings, Summer Empowered, again, those were offered. And then on August 17th, our campus counselors, they did trauma-informed practices, but then they really spent time talking about SEL and what is social emotional learning, what are the competencies, what are the foundation, and identifying how that aligns to our learner profile and our learner experience. Teachers were able to take a self-assessment of their current practices to see where are they in their current practices and how does that align with the SEL 5 competencies. And then they provided tools and strategies for our students, whether they're virtual or face-to-face. So teachers were able to go through a foundational training of experiences and understanding, and then counselors have provided, they worked hard this summer to help provide tools and strategies that are ongoing throughout the year. Panorama is something new that I think is also going to help us measure our social emotional learning of our students. So we will be conducting a survey 3 times a year, beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. And that's going to survey students in grit, growth mindset, self-management, social awareness, self-efficacy, teacher-student relationships, and sense of belonging. So we use that phrase or the acronym SEL. These are really the skills that we are going to look at this year for our social emotional learning. And Panorama also has strategies for teachers. So once they are able to see their dashboard of their student, their classroom, our administrators will be able to see it at administrative level for all their students and their campuses and grade levels as a whole. They can then design strategies to help those students in the areas of weakness. Staffing additions for this year. I mentioned Melissa Goldthwait just a minute ago. We were able to add 1 student support counselor position for our elementary. And so I'm excited about that. She comes to us with a specific licensure. She's an LCSW and is going to be able to provide some more direct intervention for our elementary students. For our middle school, we've engaged in a contract with Next Step Community Solutions. Contracted LPC will be on campuses to serve students. Of course, that is with consent. Both what Eric and Melissa do is with consent, and this as well, because they hold a certain licensure. The other thing we're exploring is a telebehavioral health contract through Children's Health. This is through the Mental Health Consortium. Children's Health reached out to me and we visited about what telebehavioral health looks like. Some other school districts are using that. And so that is free. They have a donation where it is free to schools. And so we are going to engage in a contract with Children's Health, and we'll probably try to pilot. They recommended piloting like one campus in secondary at first. And so we still have some work to do on that, but that's coming up. We've also been providing COVID-19 supports, even since last spring, resources for our parents on our district website, the Facebook Live that I mentioned. Our counselors are providing supports for our teachers through training and helpful support throughout the year. Virtual counseling availability. I've already seen messaging. Our counselors are sure to ensure that as they are posting and principals are sending newsletters, that our virtual learners, whether it's now or even long-term virtual learners, that they know that there is counseling available and how to access those counselors. And then we are currently reviewing our parent learning opportunities for our COVID-19 situation and just trying to determine what are our needs of our parents and how to deliver. We've updated our website, or that's in process. That was a recommendation from our SHAC of 1920, really wanting to make sure our resources were there for parents in a variety of topics. And so I had our student support counselors vet those and update them for our district website. And when I mentioned a variety of topics in our SHAC, we covered different things from bullying to mental health to substance abuse, etc. And so we've given that information to Jamie McNulty, and she will be updating that if she hasn't done so already. They vetted those and made sure that those were resources for our parents. And then I've updated our comprehensive guidance plan that is also viewable on our website. And as our comprehensive guidance, our SEL tools and strategies for teachers, counselors worked very hard this summer in coordination with Eric Hoff and Shannon Malone to make sure we had tools and strategies for our teachers that were ongoing. So that is the end of my presentation. I apologize, that was very lengthy. I felt like I had quite a bit to share. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.